you ready for a deep dive into one of the most intense animated series out there? Welcome to Radioactive Ramblings, where we are currently breaking down the world of Invincible. Each week, we're going to unpack the jaw-dropping twists, the unforgettable characters, and that trademark brutal action. From Mark Grayson's journey to the darker side of heroism, to our continued love of Debbie, we've got every moment covered.
Mark, I don't want to hurt you.
I'm not the one who's gonna get hurt.
You said you don't do threats.
Yeah, well, people change.
Whether you're a longtime fan or just getting started, tune into our exclusive takes, fan theories, and so much more. Catch new episodes of Radioactive Ramblings every week, your go-to podcast for all things Invincible and more.
Hello, listeners of Time. Guess what? We Lorehounds liked The Path to the Spear, the episode 4 of season 3 of The Wheel of Time, so much that we decided to do 2 extra episodes related to all that juicy lore we got dropped on us this week. So subscribers and season pass holders already have access to a Lorecast about the timeline of the Wheel of Time universe, where John and I talk about everything from the creation of the world to ages yet to come, putting the events revealed this week, as well as all the other events seen or referred to in the show so far, in the context of the millennia of known in-universe history. For this special Lorecast, I'm joined instead by Mark from Nevermind the Music, the podcast that explores the intersection of music and psychology, and he has put on his music professor hat to talk through diegetic music in the Wheel of Time TV show. So this includes the songs we've heard sung by characters in previous seasons, to the revelation of the song sought for centuries by the Tinkers and revealed this week. If you're listening to this episode on the public feed, then you will hear the first part of this episode, where Mark and I talk about the in-universe music of the first 2 seasons. If you have access to the Supercast or Patreon feeds, as in if you're a subscriber or season pass holder, then I recommend listening in those feeds to this episode, as that's where you'll get the full conversation, both the past seasons and the implications of the new musical reveal this week. But either way, please enjoy this extra Lorecast. Okay, let's jump right into the conversation with Mark from Nevermind the Music. Surprise! We're doing an extra Lorecast this week. So Elysia here with a second Lorecast for episode 4, because this episode deserves it. And this time, instead of John, I have a special guest, Mark from Nevermind the Music. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining.
Thanks so much. Happy to finally be here. This has been a lot of podcasting for y'all for the last week and a half.
Amazon really screwed us, but Disney's trying to screw us worse with Andor. So.
Oh yeah, that schedule's.
But we've got plans.
Well, it's. I know you all had screeners, so at least you could do a little bit of it ahead. But I have to say, keeping up with it, watching 4 episodes in a week is tricky, but also listening to podcasts about those it's been fun. But it's been a lot of Wheel of Time in my life this last week.
Isn't that the best time though? The Wheel of Time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is going to happen again in a future life, so yeah. I might as well practice now.
So you are a book reader, and by the way, we are doing, as usual with these episodes, spoilers through season 3, episode 4, as this is coming out. No future book spoilers. I don't think we need them, but yeah, you actually were really excited. You're like, I need to talk about the Wheel of Time. Let's figure out a way to talk about the Wheel of Time. So what's your background with this world?
My background, and some of this maybe I can save for another, if I'm on another episode, to not get to, because I have weird intersections with it kind of throughout the years, but I've been reading this since my 8th grade friend Mike handed me Isle of the World when I was 13 or whatever. And at that point, I think maybe the first 6 had come out, and then maybe Crown of Swords came out right after I read that from the library when it had just come out or something. So that was a long time ago. And then there's been just fits and starts. I think I probably have read The Eye of the World 3.5 times, with the half being a really bad breakup that made me just like nihilistic and I just put it down in the middle of it.
Right.
But and then only came back to the series with the Sanderson books, and I just read it all as my last reread. So my last reread was probably finished in 2014 or 15. So I haven't read it since then.
Okay.
But I go way back with this series. Like, it's probably my favorite fantasy series. I know it has its flaws that
right.
everybody talks about, but I connect with it a lot more, I think, than I do some of the other ones I've read, though some of that might just be age. Like, I hadn't read The Fellowship of the Ring when I read Eye of the World, so it didn't feel like, the Death Star coming back in episode 9 to me. It felt just like, whoa, this kind of amazing adventure. And sort of coincided with me starting to read for fun, honestly, as opposed to skimming for a book report that I didn't want to do when I was in elementary school and middle school.
Yeah, see, I did read Lord of the Rings first, but Wheel of Time is my favorite world, but because I think it feels so lived in, it feels so real.
Yeah, and I'd read The Hobbit, and I'd read Lloyd Alexander. I'd read fantasy before that, but that was the first one that drew me in, and taught me all sorts of valuable lessons about how women talk and how men and women are essentially different and cannot ever cry. Sorry, I don't love that
part, but yeah.
No, those are I remember, like, before I even really critically thought about any of that, I remember talking to one of my wife's friends about it, my girlfriend's friends at the time when I was early 20s, and just, you read The Wheel of Time? She's like, that's the worst book I've ever. He's never met a woman in his life. And it was the first time, and that goes to show, like, I hadn't done my second reread. I'd only done my 13, 14-year-old reread. So it was interesting, like, that's we'll talk about that maybe in non episode 4 podcast, because it's not really as relevant today. But I go way back. I love this series.
For me, it strikes like it's flawed, as you said. The gender thing is my biggest issue with it because it comes up so much. But it strikes out nice balance between, like, Tolkien and George R. R. Martin, where it's dark and gritty often, but there is still room for hope and for not that there isn't friendship in Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, but you know what I mean. There's more warmth in The Wheel of Time.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think since I can see you on the screen, but the audience cannot, I'm going to note that you have a braid, but you are not twiddling
tugging
it nervously and tugging on it in frustration at the ignorance of the man you're speaking to right now. So we're not totally playing to Robert Jordan.
Yeah, it depends how this conversation goes. So what do you think of the show so far?
So the show has been up and down. I enjoyed the first season a lot because of just seeing the choices they made. I loved some of the choices they made in terms of kind of modernizing it, frankly. Obviously, it's a little rough at the back half, the last couple episodes in particular. Season 2 was a lot better. I really enjoyed it. I think there are only a couple things that are questionable. This season, I think, is just far better. I think everything about the season is far better. I've enjoyed every single episode. I think episode 4, I don't know, I doubt my trustworthiness because this is also so anticipated, this story. Like, I don't know what someone who's non-reader is going to think, but I think that was one of the best episodes of fantasy TV I've ever watched.
Yeah,
like,
period.
I think that stands up to it's just the character, the story, but also, I'd love to see what somebody like David, who knows what he's talking about filmography and cinematography, would think. Like, the spinning around of Moraine's visions of the future, it's mind-blowing. And, like, I find myself, I'm the music guy, and I'm going, wow, what was the music like? I was not listening to the music or anything, and I bet that was really important to my emotional experience, but I was just so drawn in and pulled in by just the spectacle and the gravitas of what I was seeing, and just, I didn't pause it or anything, but I'm just like, oh, land's on fire. Okay, now who is that? Is that Lanfear? Is that Rand?
Right.
And it was just so engrossing. And again, I'm a longtime book reader, so I don't know how much of that is influencing it? Like, is this too confusing? Because I found myself even having to be like, wait, so the Tuatha split up before they picked up like there's this like.
Yeah, there were two splits. Yeah,
it's super confusing. And what is a civilian gonna think? You know, so. But I thought the episode was wonderful. I think the Shadow Rising, which this comes from, I remember being 13 or 14 and being like super. I felt a little bit like I was it Muradin? What's his name? Like
Muradin, yeah.
I wasn't quite pulling my eyes out, but
right.
I kind of was upset by what I read. I couldn't, my young mind couldn't kind of handle this kind of, changing of a character. Like I think back to when my oldest child was like 5 and watching some cartoon and the police were chasing, like, I don't know, it was like a Bigfoot character or something. And the police or these Mounties or something were chasing him. And my son, who was like 4, is like disturbed by the fact that the police were the bad guys. And like, I just think, and I'm like, guess what? Just get ready, son. This is the late 2010s. You got some learning to do, kid. But like, I'm thinking of that kind of innocence of being shocked by something being flipped on its side, that it kind of disturbed me. And then when I reread that book when I was 20 something, I was like, this is the best book. Like, this is the best moment, one of the best moments in the series. And so I'm just imagining this episode, and I'm talking a lot, and we're not even talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. This could be the fulcrum on which the entire series kind of turns, right? And that's why I'm kind of following these stupid anecdotes of me as a teenager versus me as an adult, and then me as a super adult reading it 10 years ago, where I actually like really got the significance of it because I was reading the whole thing. That I feel like that episode might be doing that, and I hope that lands in a way that, even if it lands with the non-book readers in the way that it did for me as a 13-year-old, that was at least emotionally effective. Though maybe you don't have 1,000 pages of identity about the Isle to reckon with, which could be a negative. Anyways, I've heard your thoughts on it, but anything you want to, I don't want to hog the spotlight too much on this. I know you loved it too.
Picking up what you were putting down, well, first of all, I have gone down a rabbit hole of watching reactions to this episode. I mean, I do that with The Wheel of Time a lot, but with this episode in particular, I just have loved seeing how people are responding to it and seeing how the book readers who were very anti the show, losing their minds, seeing non-book readers respond really well to it. And I do have to say there's, it depends on the person. Some people are really intuitive and really put the pieces together. And other people are like, oh, wait, but it's going backwards and, and it's taking them a moment longer, but still across the board. When the boar opens up, everyone's like, holy shit, and when then Moraine's visions start flipping, turning the wheel. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that moment, it's one of those moments where I think you start to wonder, wait, is this going to be a sci-fi show? When the boar opens.
It's secret sci-fi, yeah. Wheel of Time is secret sci-fi.
We're kind of staying in the fantasy vibe for every other scene, but there's something about this that is, like, you could do, if you did an Age of Legends prequel series / sequel series, it would not be fantasy in the classic way. It would be more like Foundation or something like that, which is just wild. So yeah, that I'm also curious. Maybe we talk about this on another episode, but like, how are the ratings for all of this? Like, if this gets canceled,
yeah, I'm gonna be devastated.
What if he stopped writing after The Shadow Rising? Okay, come on.
Everybody show clips of this episode to everyone who likes big spectacle television. And I think it's going to help, though. Severance just wrapped up. It was a major thing that's taking up a lot of people's time, and investment in pop culture. And I'm hoping that now with this episode, the word gets out, because I have not seen a bad review of this episode anywhere.
Yeah. It stacks up with Rings of Power. Like, this looks like $1 million. Like,
oh yeah.
It's funny because we're following 2 characters the entire time, almost one character the entire time. So it's sort of a bottle episode.
Yeah.
But how many different sets, how many different locations,
the costumes,
how many different costumes. They had to think of just the Moraine and Lanfear killing each other over and over again. They had to shoot how many scenes just with different costumes for half of them at least, and different scenes. Like, I can't imagine the work this took. This is monumental and if this show isn't considered for some of the kind of technical side, at least artistic side stuff in the Emmys, then,
yeah.
I mean, what are they? That means nobody is watching it in that.
It was M. Will on Blue Sky said if they don't give Sharon Gillam, the costume designer, if she doesn't get nominated for an Emmy, they should stop giving out Emmys.
Right, or there's something we can't imagine that's about to come down the path this year.
Yeah,
but
there's always a snobbishness towards genre TV, which is why I really hope that takes off as it should. And, it's interesting also that you mention your experience reading it over your life, because that is something that comes up a lot and it's going to hook into later. So we're here to talk about the music. But I want to say from my perspective, like the first time I read the books, I was totally looking through the eyes of Egwene. Now, when I go back and read, I identify with Moraine the most.
That I have not reread this since I became a parent. So I'm really interested what that would do. But yeah, who you identify with, like, for me is I don't know. Let's save this for another conversation.
Yeah.
I have thoughts about all of that, because that also is an evolution over my 3 complete sort of rereads. It's only one full reread, but yeah. I think we should say that though, because we're supposed to talk about.
But it does. Yeah. I mean, in a way, we're going to talk about this because at the end we're going to be talking about the evolution of a musical concept, and so that brings us back to what we are ostensibly here to talk about. Other than, of course, the deserved gushing over episode 4, which absolutely deserves 15 minutes of gushing. But before we get into the major thing that happened musically this episode is we seem to have gotten an answer for a question about the song. And we're going to get to that. And that's going to be the bulk. That's going to be on the subscriber side of the episode for the most part, although we'll start to talk about it here. But I just wanted to take a step back before this current episode and ask you, what do you think about the use of music in the show so far up to this point? And we're talking in this case about diegetic music, not the score. Although I think the diegetic music, does that still go credit to Lauren Balfe? I'm sorry, correct me someone if I should be crediting other composers for these. But
so, like, in terms of the series, so like when I was looking up, like listening to some of these and looking up the lyrics and stuff like that, for example, The Man Who Can't Forget, that song was credited as written by, I don't remember, I didn't write down his name, the man who had written that episode. So,
okay.
So did the melody get written by that person too, or did the series composer, or is it just the lyrics? Like, I didn't find a lot on that. So I'm assuming there's a lot of overlap between the songs and the score in terms of the musical authorship, but the writers are also in there. And I think that's interesting because there's so much music, so many song lyrics in the books.
Right.
And those are not used for these songs.
Not yet, right? At least. Yeah.
The Man Who Can't Forget, Sing for Manetheren are not the songs that are in. So that's really, it's interesting to me that they chose to do that, because they could have clearly given us, because to people that aren't book readers, like, this has a lot of music like The Lord of the Rings does, but to me, it's used in a completely different way. There isn't, let's sit around the fire and someone's going to sing a song about Beren and Luthien or whatever. It's more like Matt has these 3 song lyrics that keep running in his head for half of a book as he's like coming to terms with something, or like, he keeps thinking of Jack of the Shadows or whatever. It's not like they're sitting around singing the songs. It's more like, almost like the songs are in their heads.
Well, that's true. But then also from the first book, the boys, Matt and Rand specifically, they play music in taverns to earn money so that they can travel, which is something they don't have much time to go into that in the show.
I want to come back to that actually later, once we talk about the meaning. And I think to the non-book readers, since we're not spoiling here, you said something about the song. I think just people need to realize this this ending is not something we book readers knew the answer to. This,
right.
What is the song that the traveling people are always talking about? We didn't know. And the show is giving us an answer for that. And so it's kind of crazy. It doesn't matter
right.
whether we know or not, but it's kind of crazy just to think of that kind of having some clarity now to the extent that it does.
Well, it hooks into a popular fan theory that was debunked by Brandon Sanderson, who, again, wrote the last books for anyone who doesn't know after Robert Jordan passed away. But, we'll get into that. But yeah, so in universe, we definitely, you brought up Dance with Jack of the Shadows. I think that is like the number one song that people want to see on screen. And I think that would probably be like a next season kind of thing, to be honest. But other than that, I don't think that there are many songs that most readers could immediately call to mind. I wrote down some more common ones like Wash the Spears as an Aiel song, a Maidens of the Spear songs. The Wind That Shakes the Willow, Forward the Lion, that's a Camelin March song, Coming Home from Tarwin's Gap. So yeah, these are all regularly used, but I think if you asked the random book reader on the street, name a Wheel of Time song, they'd all say Dance with Jack of the Shadows.
That's the hit single. Yeah.
That's the hit single. Yeah.
And because it's used to represent things in somebody's character arc, right?
Right. It's Matt's one hit wonder. Yeah.
What exactly it represents, I don't remember, but it's burned in my brain at least partially.
Yeah. Well, I remember there's a hand involved, maybe a color. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, okay. So there were then 2 in-universe songs used in season 1 that were sung by people, and you were kind enough to clip them for us. So let's give a quick listen to the first one that we heard in episode 2, I believe it was. Sing for Manetheren or Weep for Manetheren. And this
Sing is how I saw it credited in the the wiki, but
yeah,
sort of
in my brain it's Weep, but that's probably just my brain doing Weep for Maneth. Anyway, let's hear them sing it. The Emmonsfield 5, or the Two Rivers 5 in the show.
They bought the land with their blood long ago. Long ago.
Oh,
Sing of Manetheren. Weep for the blood of Aemon.
Cry for Maneth. This is like my Wicked. I mean, Wicked's obviously my Wicked, but this is the one I cannot not sing along with these songs.
It's your Witch's Road also.
Right, yeah. The Witch's Road is also my Witch's Road. But this is a very folk song tied to the history of the Two Rivers. What do you think of this one?
So a few things jump out to me. I want everybody to just think of that, oh weep, and this kind of, gosh, I forgot what's the first line we just heard? Do bum bum ba dum bum. There's this bum bum bum. Just remember that the melody started with, it's first Matt sings a couple lines by himself, vaguely in tune, and then everybody else joins him.
The new Matt is a really good singer.
Oh, is he? All right, we get to hear him. So just remember this ba-bum kind of thing. You're going to hear that in some of these other things. So this is you said folk influence. This actually sounds a lot like an African-American spiritual, honestly.
Yeah, you think
there's something bluesy about it that the other ones don't have. Manetheren. I don't remember what the line is.
Manetheren.
There's like a bluesness to it. It's mostly what we would call a pentatonic scale. So shout out to a Nevermind the Music episode featuring, very irrelevant to this, Miley Cyrus's song Party in the USA, where we talk about a pentatonic 5-note scale. This one is almost completely pentatonic. It has a few moments that aren't, but that's a very common folk scale. But when we have that kind of bluesy melody with we call it antiphony, the oh weep, the back and forth call and response. That's a very a thing we hear in a lot of spirituals. West African music does it a lot, and so African American, Southern American music does it. Obviously, it happens in other styles too, but like our cultural references for the American audience, it's kind of going to come from that. So this one feels different from the other songs we're about to hear because it kind of feels like it's rooted in that, which is not what I would assume when you're saying, oh, make some music for the Two Rivers folk songs. It wouldn't be that. I feel like most fantasies would go, let's go to kind of Celtic references or Appalachian references, and we're getting something different. And I think it's cool. I like it.
Yeah. And maybe because they have tied up, more Celtic influences with, say, the Tuathan, who they have having an Irish accent. And, for instance, new Matt is Irish and he has to take out, go with a different English accent to play the character. So they are purposely leaning away from Celtic. And because in the books, the characters in the Two Rivers are described as having deep tan skin, dark hair and eyes. Maybe that's, we can see by casting that they've sought characters like that. And we also know from a lot of, for instance, we know Shinar and Malkir, they has a lot of Korean influences because they cast Daniel Henney and he's Korean. So,
but it's also mixed up, right? Because who is the American stand-ins? It's the Seanchan, right? And so why is it the two? It's just sort of a musical vibe. And, right, that's right. We should have. Are we going to have some like mountain music from Kentucky or bluegrass or whatever for them? I don't know, but like this felt sort of like a Southern American spiritual to me in a way that the others didn't. So
let's
I don't know that it means anything. Just is.
Yeah. Let's contrast it with the other diegetic song from season 1, which is "The Man Who Can't Forget," which is sung by the Gleeman Tom Marillion, and this is how that one goes.
I can still hear the way that he cried for the ones he had lost. He saw them in the rivers, he felt them in the rain.
Bum, 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 bum. Same start of the phrases, by the way. It's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was curious if you saw any, because this is still Tom Marillion's from Andor, but he's from the other side of Andor, not this isolated mountain community that used to be Manetheren. So Weep for Manetheren, I suppose, is an older song, but this is one that would have Andoran roots as well.
Do we think that this is written by Tom Marillion? Or is this a song everybody knows? Because I know they're kind of like, especially in the book, he's...
Yeah.
I think I associate Tom Marillion more with epic poems. He plays
in the books.
He does, or he doesn't.
No, I don't think that he writes the songs in the books. But he does. Or maybe he wouldn't sell new songs as old songs. But I think also he plays to the crowd. He's like, these are the favorites.
There's another Gleeman we meet named Jason that is more associated with being a composer and a musician, whereas I think Tom is kind of more like Homer, not Simpson, but the Odyssey Homer, like storyteller, right?
Right.
So, yeah, this song, I feel like musically in the first season, they were trying to do, we are not doing the folk Irish kind of British Isles filking kind of, if I'm using that term correctly, kind of vibe. We're going with an Americana sound. So this one feels kind of country or folk Americana. He's got a guitar. He does not have one of the, there's we can talk later about the other instruments that occur in the series, but harp and flute are the two that Tom's associated with. And it's not that. It's a guitar, which is not something that was invented until the 1800s on Earth. So they went out of their way to give a different vibe. It doesn't feel as spiritual, kind of blues influenced as Sing for Manetheren does, but this kind of minor key, simple guitar strumming, husky, raspy voice performance does feel sort of almost outlaw country kind of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say the tonal quality is quite bluesy, even if maybe the melody isn't per se. I mean, you definitely know the definition where those lines are drawn better than me. Okay, so that brings us to season 2. We really only had one diegetic song, and it's not the typical. It's not a sung song the same way that these other two were. And this one comes from a very different source. It comes from the Ogier, who have this talent of singing to wood, to plants, to help them grow. So we hear the Shanchan force L'Oreal to perform for them, and this is what we get. That's giving me monk vibes.
Well, it sounds a little bit, because it's extremely low. It's in the sort of vocal fry, strobos range. It has a little bit of that Tibetan throat singing vibe. He's not singing harmonics above his voice, but the score is interacting with it in a really dissonant, kind of overtony way that kind of evokes that. This one's completely pentatonic, right? So notice again that it starts with the same figure, that all of these pieces, including the fourth one we haven't talked about, all start the same. It's very interesting. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what that means. But yeah, this has totally a different vibe. This sounds like magic, right? It's not a song in the same way. That's meant to, I don't know if it's a processed voice or what, or if they just got a singer with an extremely rumbly voice, but it's supposed to feel a little bit different, right? This is almost like the stone singing or something in Rings of Power. I'm trying to remember what they called it with the dwarves.
Right, yeah. I think it is stone singing.
And it doesn't sound even like it's in the space. Like the music is mixed differently. Loyal's voice feels all reverbed out in a way that doesn't sound like you're staring at him 3 feet away, whereas everything else is really dry when we're hearing like Matt sing for Manetherin. It doesn't sound all boomy like this, right? And it's not just because of the room, it's because there's a magic happening. Even though this doesn't have anything to do with the power, right? This is something else, tree singing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an Ogier power, but the Ogier are, we'll have to do a Lorecast about that sometime, but nobody completely knows where they come from, and some people say they're aliens.
Oh wow!
From another planet.
That's I think that's a theory. I don't know what that's founded on, but
no, I mean, yeah, that's something we'll have to get into. I'm sure. Obviously, L'Oreal's already brought up the longing, so we're gonna have to visit a steading. If not this season, definitely next.
Right.
And the steadings are where Ogier come from. For anyone who
or we lose Loyal.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll pause the conversation for this public teaser there. In the Supercast and Patreon feeds, we continue on for another 40 or so minutes talking about the new song introduced in this episode and how that ties in with the previously discussed songs musically and thematically and what it means for the lore. If you want to hear the rest of that and you don't yet have access to these feeds, to the Supercast and Patreon feeds, and you're also interested in, our Lorecast on geography and the timeline of this world and the rest of the Lorecast coming this season, not to mention the show guide with character guides and other guides and episode recaps, and of course no ads, there are 2 options to access that. There's the monthly subscription options for people who want the extra Wheel of Time content, but also extra Severance and Andor and other show content, plus the other monthly extras like Second Breakfast and the Elevensies Movie Club. And the other option for those who only want the Wheel of Time content for a one-time $10 fee, that's for the whole season, plus previous episodes ad-free from last season. Then there is the one-time season pass option, and you can find links in the show notes for both of those. If that's not of interest to you, then great. Well, thanks for hanging out with us and letting us talk music for a little while. And we will be back on Thursday with the breakdown of episode 5. Do check out the link tree in the show notes for links to the affiliates. You'll also find links in the show notes to the Nevermind the Music feed, but also specifically the Party in the USA and Pentatonic Life Transitions episode that ties into this one. Mark kept talking about the pentatonic scale. He breaks it down more there. And Nicole also talks about, actually thematically, it ties in rather well from the psychology angle. And of course, there's also a link to the Discord where we are discussing Wheel of Time. It's getting nice and lively there. And we definitely want your feedback about the show, about the podcast, about anything Wheel of Time. We have moved the feedback episode to after episode 5 just because it's been a really crazy week for John. So that just works out better and gives people more time to catch up after that big 3-episode drop. So if you want your feedback to be discussed as well, please send that to WOT at thelorehounds.com. And thanks so much again. See you on Thursday.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions, feedback, and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all our episodes at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities.
Think of a song you really love.
Don't you want to know why you love it so much?
Well, we can't answer that.
No, but we can deep dive into it anyway.
Unless we get too sidetracked.
We're the Nevermind the Music podcast.
One musician
and one psychologist
talking about iconic songs, the musical tricks that blow our minds,
and what they show us about our minds.
Join us each week as we pick apart everything from TLC to Weezer,
and from Billie Eilish to Bruno Mars, with plenty of distractions in between.
Check out Nevermind the Music, wherever you get your podcasts.